What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Everyday Sens podcast. We got another pregame edition here for the people. I'm Jack Richardson, joined as always by Brendan Parks to preview the New York Rangers visiting the Ottawa Senators. Rangers are on a tear. We'll get into all of that. So, Brendan, how are you doing today? It's Tuesday, December 5th, Ottawa Senators game day.
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing a lot better because they won against Seattle the other night, so that was good. Finally, got past a rough little stretch of games, and we got a 2-0 victory shutout, first shutout of the season. Anton Forsberg came through, and he's starting again tonight. So Seattle, beating them is one thing, right? That's that was a team that was, I think, 8-10-6 coming into that game, so 8-11-6 now. Tonight you've got New York, who's lost like 5 of 23 games this season, which is insane. This is going to be a true test, so we're going to dive into that. Again, thanks to everybody for tuning in. We've got some viewers and we got some chats already. Some really good engagement in the last one too. I know a lot of people were enjoying kind of the venting atmosphere. That's what we did with the last live. We kind of let our frustrations out. We got everybody in the chat letting their frustrations out. A little more positive tonight, but again, the Sens are still 9-10 on the season, so we've got some work to do on the ice, I think. And then we've also got some stuff we can talk about off the ice with Michael Del Zotto did an interview today. I know Michael Anlauer he talked about some stuff with the Sens and how, DJ Smith's job and his thoughts on that. So we can dive into all of it, but let's just get going here. We've got just under 1 hour until puck drop in Ottawa.
Yeah, so again, if people are watching on Twitter, because we are live on Twitter or X and YouTube as well, both platforms, if you would like to comment along, which we encourage, and the YouTube goes a long way to support us as a podcast and everything and support the page. So if you would like to comment along, you have to head over to the YouTube, a bit more engaging there. So we can get into the Rangers, and obviously I mentioned the Rangers are a wagon. I got the record there at the bottom of the screen. They're 18-4-1, one of the best teams in the NHL. They just keep humming. We'll get into all of that, but like you mentioned, obviously some things to mention about the Ottawa Senators. Ridly Greig back in the lineup. There's two sides of the injury card here that we got tonight. We got Ridly Greig coming back after a 10-game absence. We'll break down what his return means for the team and for the forward core. Third line looks a lot better now. And then obviously Thomas Chabot will not be playing tonight. MRI being done after what was arguably one of his best games of the season. An absolute downer, I think. So what do you want to start with? We can start with Greig. Let's start on the positive note here. Mr. Ridly Greig back in the lineup. A rookie this season, was up there for the Calder early on this season. He was one of the best rookies in the league. And then obviously went down against the Los Angeles Kings 10 games ago. So it's weird because they haven't played so many games. 10 games doesn't seem like that long of a time, but he's been out for just about a month now. So what are your thoughts on Greig returning to the lineup? I believe he's going to line up beside Dominic Kubalik and Matthew Joseph, it looks like, tonight. So give me your thoughts on that line, and we'll get into like Seattle, that game, when we talk more about Chabot, I think.
Yeah, so Greg, I think coming back is one of the biggest things that could have happened for this team. I know, obviously, he was up there for the Calder discussions, and people, when they're rookie players, they kind of overlook rookies and they think they're not that impactful. But Greg was one of Ottawa's most impactful players. I think I'm even going to do an article on it just because, like, when you look at the metrics, and again, I love metrics. I know a lot of people don't necessarily love the numbers, but Greg led the Sens in like almost every single metric. Like, he was up there, especially defensively. That was the big thing. He was a very net positive player on the defensive side of things. I had his stats up. So he was a +9, I believe, something like that. He was on the ice for 10 goals, 4 at 5v5, and 1 against a 5v5, which is like, you can't really dispute that. Like, even if you don't love numbers, like when you talk about being on the ice for 10 goals and then 1 against, like that's a big difference, right? Like that is a very net positive player. So I think Greg obviously just defensively is a big thing because the team is so bad defensively. Like they've struggled so much in the defensive zone that I think getting Greg back, obviously as a centerman, that's one of his priorities. It's going to help out a lot. The other thing is just kind of what it does. It's like addition by subtraction almost. So Rourke Chartier, right? Like we've talked with him a little bit. He's been good defensively, honestly. I've been happy with Chartier's impact on that side, but he brings nothing offensively. Like you could hand him the puck on a breakaway with nobody within 10 feet of him, and he somehow wouldn't get a shot on net. Like he just brings literally nothing to the offensive zone. So getting Greg back, I think that's going to be a big thing because that third line, Tarasenko and Kubalik have been stapled to Chartier for the last little bit. And big surprise, they haven't produced anything like that. Chartier is just kind of like a killer offensively, and so that makes him a good fourth line center. But I think getting Greg back, that's going to really help Kubalik. It's going to help. It's going to be that addition by subtraction, like I said, and obviously Tarasenko bumps up because him, Stützle, and Batherson looked great last game. They scored a goal and looked really good. So they're on the line now. But I think that just bringing Greig in, it's going to help the line mates. Kubalik's been very quiet. Like he's done nothing of note in the last like 2 weeks. Like he's just been dead silent. So hopefully Greig coming back is going to help that. But again, center in my mind is, I don't want to say, I'm going to say arguably the most important position in hockey. It's very important to have depth. Every Stanley Cup champion has a strong top six center core, but they have strong depth as well. Very important. So when you have a guy who, he's 26 years old and has never held an NHL role consistently, and you have him playing in a third line center role, that's not ideal, right? That's really hard to win when you have those situations. So having Greig back, and again, we should limit our expectations. A high ankle sprain, obviously low grade, but that's nothing to be, like you can't expect Greig to come back and be the same player necessarily, because high ankle sprain is what Batherson had too. It was just a much worse injury. It's a hard thing to come back from. I guess it's one of the worst injuries. I've never had it, but people have said it's one of the worst injuries you can get to recover from. So considering Greig only missed like a month, not even, I don't think it was that serious, but still need to temper our expectations. I do think though, regardless, having him as that third line center is going to be huge. And by the way, Shane Pinto, I want to say there's another month, like less than 2 months now until Pinto can return, until he's eligible. So when you get him and Greig back, this lineup's going to look a lot different. People kind of undervalue depth. They're two depth players, but at the same time, like Ridly Greig, man, he's very important to this team. He proved that through the first stretch of games this year. He was a big contributor in their first kind of opening 4 games there where they played pretty well. So I'm excited to have him back. I think he's going to kind of tidy things up defensively, but he's going to really, really impact Kubalik. And I think Joseph too. He looked great with Joseph earlier in the year, but I think Kubalik's going to be the biggest kind of benefactor of Ridly Greig coming back.
Well, I mean, Joseph's been one of their best players, period. So, like, whoever he's playing with is going to benefit the way he's going right now. It's funny you mentioned Pinto's back in about a month and a half, but he still hasn't even served half of his suspension. They've played 19 games, 20 or 21, I guess would be the exact split. So like this will mark the halfway point of his suspension essentially tonight, or halfway through the next game if you want to nitpick numbers. But it's crazy when you think about it like that. So yeah, in terms of days, it's very close, but games wise, we're not even halfway there yet. So we'll table that, because that's going to be a discussion. What do you sign him to? When can he get going? How good is he when he comes back? Like that's going to be a whole thing to unpack. But in terms of Ridly Greig, man, I'm stoked. He was I don't want to say, I think I say it all the time, he's my favorite player on the team. I've got like 5 guys who are my favorite player on the Sens right now. But coming up before this season, he was easily my favorite prospect. I think outside of the top guys and like Stützle, Sanderson, he was the guy. It's just exciting, man. Like at the World Juniors a couple of years ago, what he did in Brandon, what he did in Belleville when he was there for a short time, like he's exciting in the way that maybe a way that like Sanderson is, right? Where the offense, you weren't expecting it. He was touted as this gritty guy who's going to get in the opponent's face. And we've seen way more of that this year. Obviously the big hit on DeBrincat that really changed the tone of the season for the Sens, unfortunately. But like it was a great clean hit. Like stuff like that is what they've been missing, I think. Just a little bit of bite. And it sounds weird to say that for a team like the Ottawa Senators, led by Brady Tkachuk, with a bunch of tough guys, essentially. Or actually, I don't even know. I mean, again, that's another discussion, like what the Sens toughness is like. We talked about it last episode in the Florida game. Like, was it embarrassing? Was it a good sign that they were just dropping the mitts all the time? But a guy like Ridly Greig is just going to give you that extra punch. I like what you mentioned about Rourke Chartier, like not bad by any means, but just playing above his I don't want to say pay grade, but he's not a third line center in the NHL, and that's fine. I really do think he's been an okay fourth line guy though. With whatever combination they go with. I don't know if they're going 11-7 tonight. I guess we'll find out in the next little bit here. But yeah, so to me, this is a boost, and we will talk about Chabot here now. But for the forwards alone, which the amount of line shuffling, we talked about that as well before the last game against Seattle. Like the line juggling alone can be frustrating, and I think a lot of that was due to the lack of center depth that they had. Right, so they've played maybe 3-4 games with Stützle, Norris, and Greig down the middle. So looking, hopefully, fingers crossed, obviously you never know what can happen, but let's hope with this gauntlet of a schedule coming up that they can maintain this core center-wise. It's still very young. Greig is a rookie. Stützle is 21. Norris is 23. But all 3 guys just give you something at even strength. And like you mentioned, I think center ice is absolutely the most important, especially on this team. We've talked about their defensive zone. The wingers don't play a ton of defense, or haven't really so far, other than Matthew Joseph, obviously. But when the centers, when the wingers don't, it puts that much more pressure on the Sens. So on the centers, I should say. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what Greig looks like. I'm not too concerned because it was a low grade and high ankle sprain. I don't think it'll be like Drake Batherson's. Batherson was out for much longer, I believe. Or maybe he wasn't. I don't really remember how long. I think he did come back. I know he came back that season, but I feel like it was longer than Greig missed. But it might
Well,
not be, and maybe we'll
yeah,
see if
because
that affects him.
Batherson's was from there and Dell hit, wasn't it?
Well,
So
it was, yeah,
that was
but
months and months, wasn't it?
well, it felt like it because they played so many games, I think. But
True.
like I said with Greig, like he missed 10 games, but he still missed a month. Like I think that might be the similar timeline to Batherson. I could be wrong. Maybe someone wants to let us know in the chat how long Batherson missed in terms of days, not games. But regardless, he probably isn't a super 100%. But Greig isn't like skating isn't his strong suit, right? It's not like it's Joseph or Stutzler or whoever who injured their leg here. Like Greig's game is to just be a positional player, and it's really what he's done with the puck on his stick. It's not really his skating that's impressed me so far. So I'm not really nervous about him coming back from that. Let's go to the other side of the injury news. Thomas Chabot. This sucks. He had a great game on Saturday, which we will touch on, but I forgot to put up the thing here. So Chabot is out again. He came back for 2 games after he missed 10, just like Greig did. He missed 10 with a broken hand, completely unrelated injury. It looks like his knee or something. He did miss time on Saturday. He came out of the game, then came back, continued to dominate. This sucks, man. Like I don't want to say I was just coming around on Thomas Chabot, but he was pretty polarizing last season. It was starting to go that way this year. And then you pointed out the numbers when he's in the lineup versus out of the lineup, how their team just like the team defense, the puck possession, everything is just better with Chabot. And he's been injured a lot before and he's never played a full season, which we should note. But with Chabot, I think in years past when he gets injured, personally, I didn't really see a huge drop off in the way the team was playing. It was more like, oh, we've got Chikrin, we got Brandstrom to run the power play, we got Sanderson coming up now. This was the first stretch of games, the 10 games, where you could like legitimately see the absence of Thomas Chabot, and it was so obvious. And when he came back, like Seattle, like it was a great game for the Sens, which we'll touch on as well. But it hurts because it feels like they just got comfortable with those pairings, maybe even, and like so we'll see what the results are. Maybe it's not too serious, but it doesn't bode well that he's not skating at all and waiting for results on an MRI.
Well, he came back last game too. Like he was out, he got hurt, and then he came back, and so it was a sigh of relief. He was like at the end of the game, they did the stick raises. There's even pictures of him. He's got his stick up. He was still out there. It seemed like it was a small thing, and then it turns out that it might be more serious. I would assume like my positive side is saying maybe because he came back, we can expect that he won't miss serious time. Just because like it would have been pretty hard for him to return and play the rest of the game if he had something like really serious. But whatever it is, he'll probably miss at least a couple of games. So it is terrible because, yeah, I mean, Chabot, I put together an article and I had, the numbers with and without, and it was just basically, I mean, don't get me wrong, Ottawa still wasn't perfect with him in the lineup, but like their numbers plummeted in every way. Like every single number went down by a significant margin. The only one that stayed even close to where it was, for the games that he missed compared to the ones that he was in was actual goals for, which is the one spot where Ottawa's, done well this year. And even that fell from second in the league to seventh in the league. Like it all regressed and they were bottom 5 in like every metric without him. So I think the biggest thing with Chabot is possession. Like they just are a better team. They break out better. They go through the neutral zone better. Like he plays heavy minutes, so he's on a lot and he's someone who actually is good with the puck. I know people don't love his turnovers and that happens, but like realistically, when you look at the grand scheme of things, turnovers are a lot easier to notice than a beautiful breakout pass, for example. So he does make a lot of good plays. He is a very good player. So yeah, having him out sucks. It's more the fact that like now Travis Hamonic is paired with Jacob Chikrin tonight. Like Travis Hamonic has been a real bad player, and we love Hamonic, but like not on the ice we don't, because last game Hamonic actually only played 5 minutes and 16 seconds, all at 5v5. Like Ottawa dominated that game pretty handedly, but when Hamonic was on the ice for those 5 minutes, they were shot attempts. Sorry, were 11-4 for Seattle. That was like the only time when they got outchanced by the other team. So Hamonic he's not the player he was in his prime, and he really has been a liability. So to have him now, like you can say Chabot being out sucks, but it's more so that now you've got to play these other players. Even Bernard Docker, I like how JBD's played, but like, is he like he's playing with Sanderson tonight? Is he a first pairing defenseman that's capable of those 20 plus minutes? Like, I don't know. That's a pretty nervous situation. So now you've kind of got the situation where you have to play these depth guys into higher roles again. And we just saw how that worked, over the first stretch of games there with Chabot out. So now we've got back to that. So yeah, I'm pretty nervous. It sucks because we were so hyped about this top four to start the season. Like before the year, we previewed Ottawa versus like every other Atlantic team and a bunch of other teams. And their defense was their saving grace a lot of the time. It was their top four. It was like, well, this is better than the other team, even if it's a good team. And I mean, we've seen Chabot and Chychrun and Zub and Sanderson. We've seen those four play, and I want to say 5 games together now, or maybe a bit more than that. But like Zub was hurt to start the year too. He was out for a handful of games. Like we haven't seen these guys really kind of mesh and get their groove. It's just been like sporadic moments of time together. So that sucks, and it's really hurt the team. I'm still not one to blame injuries. I still think that you have to find a way to overcome this. You cannot lose 4 of the next 5 games and then say, well, Chabot was hurt, so that's why we lost. Like, that's not reasonable. Somebody has to step up, and if nobody can, then, like, you should have planned better because, frankly, Jacob Chychrun has a terrible injury history. Chabot, yeah, he's never finished a season. He's missed, like, I don't know, at least, like, in most seasons, 10-plus games. Whether it's at the end, it doesn't matter. Like, he still has had injuries in his career. You know there's a good chance he's going to get hurt. Zub has missed time. He missed time last year. Sanderson missed time in college. You know there's a potential risk there. Like these guys are all, you can't expect them to stay healthy the entire time. So you've got to plan for that. You've got to have other defensemen ready to go. And now you just have to hope that JBD and Hamannik can step up because they've also got Brandstrom playing with Zub tonight, which is weird. I don't know if they're trying to do like a 3-pairing thing here and keep it balanced, but for some reason that they've got this all mangled now as the lines are too. So yeah, I mean, losing Chabot, it's a big deal, but that can kind of lead us, I think, into our December gauntlet because, I mean, you're not going to have him for at least tonight, probably the next game, maybe the game after that. And then you've got, this crazy stretch of games coming up in December. And frankly, like, even though they're crazy, they have to win. The Sens are 9-10. The season's moving along here. Like we're what are we now? A fifth of the way done, a quarter of the way done, something like that. And
not even a quarter yet.
Yeah, well, it's still moving along, and there's not a lot of time because the Eastern Conference is deadly. Like the Sens can be, even as basically last in the Eastern Conference. That's how goddamn good this conference is. So let's dive into the schedule here because it is not overly friendly.
Yeah, it's brutal. I posted a screenshot of it and I cut it off of the Golden Knights just because of what could fit in the phone and like just put that it's a gauntlet or whatever, a little LeBron meme for Twitter there. But it gets worse after that. So I'll go through it. It's just all of December pretty much. And doesn't, I mean, actually January is a little bit easier at the start, but all of December is brutal. So I don't know where these teams are in relation to playoff spots. I know which ones weren't in a playoff spot last year that are right now that they're going to play. So I'm going to run through these teams, and I believe one of these teams coming up here is not in a playoff spot at the moment, maybe 2 or 3, but the 2 that aren't are very good as well. So they got tonight against the New York Rangers, one of the best teams in the NHL, Thursday against the Leafs at home, Red Wings on Saturday, Hurricanes on the 12th. Then they go on a 5-game road trip, and this is the road trip from hell. At St. Louis on a Thursday, at the Stars the next night, Sunday at Vegas, Tuesday at Arizona, which in years past, that's probably the one you circle, like, hey, that's the one we're going to get. The Coyotes are a wagon this season all of a sudden, which is awesome to see. They're 13-9-2. They've won 5 in a row against all the former Stanley Cup champs. Pretty cool little schedule nugget. Then the Sens go at Colorado to wrap up that road trip. Then they're coming home to play the Penguins on Saturday the 23rd. Then it's Christmas. Then they're right back at it Wednesday the 27th in Toronto, Friday the 29th versus New Jersey in Ottawa, and then New Year's Eve against the Buffalo Sabres. The Sabres are the easiest one on that schedule. That is a gauntlet of a schedule. And yeah, like I don't know if the Blues are in a playoff spot. I'm just going to eyeball it all.
Only Pittsburgh and New Jersey are the only teams that are not in playoff spots. Every other team is on there,
and those are some teams, right? So, like the whole point of that, like you mentioned, they got to win. There's no excuses. I expect I'm not going to fault them for losing one here and there in this stretch, but based on what they did earlier, they've now put themselves in a position where they got to win these hockey games. We've seen it for season after season. As bad as November has been, December's been a good month for them. So I kind of want to put it at this actually. So when they mention, and I personally think there is something to this. However, I think they're spinning it because they are losing and they haven't had a great record. The amount of time between games and how playing a lot is going to get them in a better groove. Personally, I can see that. I can, because getting into routine matters, blah, blah, blah. Like all of that's important. That being said, like a couple injuries like Chabot, and then you're just decimated. You go on those long road trips. The Western road trips have just been absolutely awful for this specific core of the team too. They haven't been kind. So that this one specifically, actually, like this St. Louis, Arizona, Vegas, Colorado. Last year they got pumped in Colorado. Like didn't win, had a bad game in Vegas last year too. So um, we'll cross that bridge. There's a lot more hockey to play before that. But this week alone, actually, like tonight against the Rangers, Leafs and Red Wings, those are massive games, man. Like you want to talk about losing ground quickly in the Atlantic to teams that you have games in hand on in your division. You got to win those hockey games. They don't have a good record in their division right now anyway. So it's a gauntlet. It is, but it's such a different feel now. It's not like I'm not going to take a moral victory tonight. Like they might play well. And if they do, and it's just a 1-goal game, whatever here and there, you can spin positives out of that. And I won't hate if they do, because the Rangers are that good of a team, but they should be, and they are at the point now where we got to be expecting them to actually win these games. It's not measuring sticks anymore, or it is in a way, but it's not a measuring stick for a young team. It's a, how can you evaluate your players against these good opponents? Before I throw to you too, I want to mention, do you think there's anything to, I think we talked about it a little bit last time, but like the patience of Steos and Andlauer mentioned it as well. Just, I'm trying to learn. It's been 2 months, 3 months. I personally, I think with this strength of schedule, not only can you evaluate the coach, you can evaluate some of your players that you really haven't seen a ton from. Like you can be like, what's this Josh Norris guy all about when he's going up against Mika Zibanejad and going up against Vincent Trocheck? Or what about when he goes up against Matthews? You know what I mean? Like I think doing that with a more rigorous schedule is a great time to evaluate. I'd really be like, I think that we're going to see a different team this month in general. And I'm going to bite the bullet and just assume that what we saw on Saturday is going to be the new norm going forward. Like just eating shots, committing to defense. Cause that was fun to watch on Saturday. It was, which sounds crazy because it was a boring 2-0 game.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, like this December schedule, as much as it is a gauntlet, it sucks. Like they play 15 games in 31 days. It is a good thing. I mean, the team has spoken to that as well. They only played 9 games in all of December. All of November. They obviously had that Sweden trip. And I mean, like I'm on board with the whole, maybe not blame, but at least acknowledge the fact that the schedule has been really weird to start the season. I don't like excuses, but like it has been bizarre. They've had easily the worst schedule of any team, not in the sense of games. Like they've actually had a very favorable schedule if you look at home games and opponents, and they had a real chance to start the year on the right foot. The problem is just like they've had weeks off in a row. They've had at least a couple 5-day breaks. They've had at least a few 3 or 4-day breaks. Like it's just been these massive gaps between games. So they have one good game and then they're off for like 4 days in a row. And it's like, we can't even remember our momentum from that game, right? Like it's all gone. You have to build it from the ground up. So I do acknowledge that. However, I think you can also look at the other side and say they should be well rested. They should have a ton of energy coming into this December stretch. Like they've had these gaps. Their bodies should not be as beaten up as some of these other teams. Like it's early in the year for everybody, but when you've played like 6 less games in a team and these guys are coming off a game 2 days ago, like you have a chance here where you should be a little bit more rested and come out with energy. My problem with a lot of their games this year has been the energy. It's been that they come out flat. Like if you're playing well and you're losing, that's one thing. But if you come out looking flat, especially on home ice like they have in the majority of games this year, that's my issue, because you can't just say, well, we're flat because we haven't had, we've had this many games off or this many days off from our last game. That doesn't make sense. Like you should be well rested. You should have the energy. You should be ready to go. So when you have 4 days off in a row and then you look like you're tired and you're like lazy on the ice, it just doesn't make sense. So that's my problem. But I think this December stretch gives them a chance to really like build the momentum and kind of just go through and become a wagon and kind of create their own, they're in the driver's seat here. Like they can create their own path a little bit. Because they have so many games in hand. You hit the nail on the head, though. When you start the year poorly and you lose those games, because they lost a lot of games. I mean, look just to Columbus the other night. Like, they've lost a lot of games this year to teams that they should have won. If you go through and you pick which games they're going to win, which games they're going to lose, like, they've lost too many games where you'd be picking that they would win it beforehand, right? Like, they've lost to bad teams, which means that they have to beat good teams. That's all that means to me. Like, if you can come out, so it's New York and then Toronto, Detroit, Carolina. I look at those 4 before the road trip. Those 4 games, if you can win like 3 of those, I mean, those are good teams. If you want to convince the fan base that you are in fact serious about your intentions and that, you are back on board with December, it's just a bad month in November. In October, bad start to the year. You've got the regular schedule. You're back. I think there's no better way to do it than to win against good teams. Like beating Seattle, that's one thing that's fine, but you should beat Seattle. Like you're not expected to beat the Rangers. The Rangers are number 1 in the Eastern Conference. If you want to prove that you're serious, go out and beat the New York Rangers tonight on home ice. Like that will leave a statement. The thing with the Sens is they haven't had enough statement wins this year, in my opinion. They need to make statement wins against good teams and go for it. Yeah.
Well, they've had one. I think it was that
One,
Toronto
yeah.
one. After the booing, it was in Toronto. That was a
Yeah,
statement
that's
win.
right.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was the only
But
one though.
other
You're
than
right.
that, yeah, like they've just kind of coasted along and haven't really proven to anybody that they're serious. Like it's not just Sens fans. Everybody in the league is going to take notice if you beat the New York Rangers. Like that's just a fact, right? Like that's not an easy thing. Like I said, they've won 18 of 23 games this year. That's insane. Like they are a really, really good team. They've got Shesterkin starting tonight. If you beat them, you're proving something. And then they've got Toronto, who is very beatable. Detroit, I don't care. I'm not on board with Detroit. I don't care about this whole hype thing. They've been good, listen, but I'm not on board with
I'm
this
so
thing.
salty.
At
I'm
some
so
point, they're going to
salty about
fall off. I
Detroit.
don't care. At
I'm
some
so
point, they're going to
salty.
fall off. So they're beatable. Carolina, it's a hard 5-game trip after that, but I'm looking at these next 4 games as the kind of prove it schedule. That's my gauntlet because if you can win at least 3 of those, fans are going to be back on board. You're above 500. They'd be, I think, 2 games above 500. You'd be comfortable. Like, just do that. That's all you need to do. Focus on those games, in my opinion. But yeah, other than that, I do want to bring up this Anlauer quote because you brought up Anlauer. So he was talking here. I don't even know where this was. It was the big meeting. I guess they walked through, by the way, just a little bit of news. They walked through like Seattle's arena, the climate pledge, and they walked through a few different, they're getting like the schematics all ready for Ottawa's new arena, which is awesome to see. But Anlauer had a quote. So he said, let me find it here. It's a process. I'm a new boss. I'm looking at all of our key employees and trying to understand and making sure they have the right tools to be successful. Steve is working pretty hard at this. I can feel the fans' angst. So I like that. Anlauer came out and he acknowledged the fact that fans have been angsty. I guess you could say that. That was his words. So obviously, it's been kind of like a hellhole in the social media sphere of Ottawa because everybody has been chanting like DJ out, and it's been this whole thing. And that's obviously what a lot of fans want to see. But to hear the owner come out and acknowledge that is important to me. That's something where it kind of restores a little bit of faith. Not that I ever lost it, but to hear him come out and say, like, he also added, like, he's a fan first. Like, he literally said, like, I'm a fan just as big as anybody else. You know, I'm new here. He acknowledged the fact that the fans have been without playoffs for 6 years now. He came out and he just said that. And just like words go a long way is the thing. This is why my accountability thing is so big, because if a player just comes out and they played a bad game and you say, we were bad tonight, we were not good enough, right? Like, to me, that restores a lot of my kind of emotional balance, I guess. Like, it makes me feel a lot more comfortable and confident in the team. It's the same with the owner. If you can come out and say, like, we know this has not been a good season, we know that fans have been, suffering for years, we are doing our best to evaluate it, and then we're going to make a decision. Like, his quotes really came across as not necessarily threatening to DJ, but they came across as like he's very aware of the situation and he knows, like, at some point or another there's going to be a line where he will make a decision. He just kind of brought up the fact that it's early. He hasn't had a good chance to evaluate. Him and Steve are doing, a lot of work, putting a lot of work into evaluating, because again, like, they are right in the sense that even just like not on the ice, but staff around the team, right? They've had such a small front office. Like, now they have so many other parts to evaluate and make sure that everything is in place before they make any crucial decisions. So I'm on board with that too. However, I will say, like, they are still 9-10, and at some point somebody's going to have to pay if they continue to lose. Like, I just talked about how if you beat these good teams, you'll restore faith. Well, if you lose to them and you go on that road trip and you're like 10-13 or 14, I mean, you're in a really, really bad place at that point where it's going to be hard to recover. So what do you think about those quotes from Anlauer, and how important is it that he kind of acknowledged the fact that things have been rough for Sens fans?
I loved it. I loved it. Every time he speaks, it's been, I don't know, 3, 4 times now. I'm just like overcome with a feeling of confidence in the way this franchise is going in the future. It's really weird, right? Because all these games, all these moments in the games are just boiled down to mistakes we've been seeing for years, because it's the same regime, the exact same players, for the most part, making the plays or the systems, whatever you want to call it. But then, you take a step back and you're like, okay, we've got a brand new owner here, a president of hockey ops, which they haven't really had in years, and then an interim GM, and it's the same guy. But it's just, it's hard to remember that those two guys, and Anlauer specifically, is a brand new set of eyes. So, like I mentioned with this schedule, it's a perfect opportunity to evaluate. Like, you're gonna get to see what you want. You're gonna see them grind through a schedule like a normal NHL schedule. You're gonna see them play against the best in the league. Like, how does Tim Stützle stack? Like, all these things that I don't want to say that we've just accepted, because Tim Stützle is a number one center. He's an elite talent in the league, going to be one of the best players in the league for a lot of years. But we've just accepted that because we know it's true, and it is true. A new set of eyes might think something different. And I'm just using him as an example. Like, I'm not saying that's what they're going to change, but things like the way the team is worked around their centerman. Maybe they don't like little things like that. I'm kind of pulling random thoughts here, but like this team was built by a different person and a guy with a different view, and clearly a lot of players were brought in to suit the coach that they had. Like they got to get their fingerprints on the team. So it's interesting when Andlauer was talking about that. I like he got the question about the fire DJ chants as well, and he did a little smirk and said, "Yeah, it was 30 fans in section 323." I love that part of the quote too, because yeah, it was still a big chant, and Angst has never been higher. And like, yeah, it's really early in his ownership for this to happen, but that's a great mentality because yeah, you can't, if you react off of a couple fans on Twitter or a couple fans here, you're not staying true to what probably brought you success in Hamilton or brought you success in other places. Like I'd have to do the research. I didn't check, but I don't know how good the Bulldogs were in 2015 when they took over. But or 2016 or whatever it was, but they obviously turned into one of the best teams in the Canadian Hockey League, in the CHL and all of CHL. So to me, like I'm not trying to just compare OHL to NHL because it's apples to oranges, but I think the management style and the managing of people, which was a little bit brought to light here with Michael Del Zotto's interview on Spit and Chicklets. Like the Sens were garbage at that for years under Pierre Dorion. So, and Danny, I know it does sound like optimism, but just hearing Andlauer talk, just it kind of snaps me out of it because yeah, like tonight they could like lay an egg and just look like a terrible team again, and then we're back to this inconsistent play. But I'm just so confident in the people running the show now, much more so than before. Like we for 8 years, man, like it was Pierre Dorion running the ship, and I'm not going to kick a guy when he's not here anymore. He was let go. We're on to the next thing here, but as a fan, it's so unique to have the same GM for so long. You get used to tendencies, you get used to reactionary moves, like Michael Del Zotto being sent down as an example because the players like him. Like that's just ridiculous. We'll get into that in a second here, but like you just get used to a management style. So I think as fans, maybe it's going to take a little bit to get used to Andlauer's ownership style, right? And I love it though. I liked the it did feel like he's aware and he has a pulse on the team, which is so, we as fans, everyone's got a pulse on this team and you got your opinions and things, but I think it's fair to say that under Melnick, and especially in the last decade or so of his ownership, he didn't have a good pulse on the franchise or on the city or whatever. And hearing Andlauer say, we got to work out what's best for our fans, for the arena, what the politicians in Ottawa want, which I kind of roll my eyes at a little bit, but it's so important when you're trying to make a deal with a government run city, like all of the stuff that goes into that. So every time Michael Andlauer speaks, we are in the best possible hands for this to happen. It's just a really strange start to the season. So I'm leaving it wasn't even a press conference, just a little scrum, but I'm leaving that scrum at the Board of Governors meeting just feeling very good about the future of this team in the short and long term, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing too. When we talk about like optimism and frankly, like I've definitely been more pessimistic, but I can also admit that I think there's a big picture sort of thing here that you have to realize. Like when it comes to the big picture in the long term, I'm absolutely optimistic because I feel like Michael Andlauer, like he's got a fantastic grip. I love the word pulse. That's a great word to use. Pulse on this team. Like he's just got the grip on it. He knows he's looking at things from the fans' perspective. We've already seen moves that are kind of in support of that. So I'm with you on that. And in the big picture, I'm very optimistic too. That's something I've been trying to get across is that like long term, I'm very confident in the players. I'm confident in the core. I'm confident in the ownership much more than I was, 2 years ago or even a year ago. So that's a big thing for me. It's just like the right now, it's hard to look big picture for Sens fans. I think more than almost any other fan base other than like Buffalo, because they've been in a rebuild forever. Like for Ottawa, it's tough because it's been, 6-7 years of people saying, look at the future. Right. And so now it's true because we have a totally different owner. It's a unique situation, but it's still hard. And I completely acknowledge that with people. It's hard to look past the right now because it's like, even for me, like I can't imagine another year with no playoffs. Like it's been so long. I mean, I started Everyday Sens in 2017 in the summer after they made the playoffs, and I was expecting them to be a Stanley Cup contender that next year. And it's been 6-7 years of just like miss, like letdown on the ice, off the ice. Now we finally have some structure off the ice, but the on ice product, like, where are you? Like, we're waiting, right? Like, we need that to catch up too. So I'm definitely, it's just the short term versus long term thing. But Michael Andlauer definitely instills confidence in me. He's been one of the most like best owners so far. I still look back at his first press conference where he just like called the league out. The things he said about the Dadonov situation, like I have not heard an owner say stuff like that where they're almost like attacking the league and Gary Bettman. It's just so bold, and I love hearing that. So very optimistic long term. One more quote, and I'll leave it at this. Then I want to hear you just mention a couple things about Del Zotto because that was interesting. I know you read some stuff on it. So the last quote from Andlauer too, he was asked about evaluating the season to date. He said, "There's some areas of improvement. We're making notes. It's so early in the season. I'll leave it at that," which to me just says like everybody kind of needs to be aware of themselves because like I will make changes if it comes to that. I mean, it's just kind of him acknowledging the fact that, yeah, things haven't been very good. Things are going to have to improve, but it is early. He's not going to make any rash moves. So very confident in the long term, but I'll let you take it from there.
And just to that quickly, like I mentioned this last episode, they're right now just going to hit the quarter mark today or next game, whatever you want to call it, like halfway through next game. That is a mid-November timeframe. Like I think most teams played game 20 around November 16th, 17th, 18th, around then. Like that's the way the schedule worked. It's just the Sens aren't playing. So technically we're in mid-November right now. And if you look at it from that perspective, I understand the patience. Still frustrating, but again, yeah, the long-term outlook. So let's go to something that actually happened about 2 years ago today. Michael Del Zotto being sent down after the whole contract. So quickly, and I'm pretty sure fans are aware of Del Zotto's tenure here in Ottawa. It was very strange. Summer 2021, they bring in Pierre Maguire, and almost immediately in free agency, they sign Michael Del Zotto to a 2-year, $2 million per contract, like not a backbreaking deal by any means, although they ended up making it one, but one that was eye popping or turned heads because, and I'm sure Del Zotto snatched it up right away because he wasn't getting offered that anywhere else or close to. So this is one of those moves I think that the Sens would have justified as like a veteran guy to bring in, whatever. But I think Del Zotto was one of the first examples, or maybe not one of the first, but one of the only examples of DJ and Pierre just not seeing eye to eye. Like, and I'm not even talking about Pierre Dorion. Maybe I think this was a Maguire move from all reports, but anyway, Del Zotto was then bought out the next summer. He got sent down 20 games into his tenure here in Ottawa or whatever it was, despite his decently strong numbers. So he got sent down and then bought out the next summer and he was gone. So like his dead money's still on the books right now. There we go. Michael Del Zotto. Yeah. So on Spit and Chicklets, he went on. He's a great interview. He was a great guy. He was always a pretty entertaining interview when he was here for the brief time. From what I remember, like just a real locker room teammate. Had a great career early too. Offensive defenseman. He wasn't good here in Ottawa. Like he wasn't good. It was a bad hockey team. However, with this new context, it was kind of implied, I think, when it happened, but hearing him actually say it in the tone in which he uses. So I encourage people, I posted a little clip on my Twitter, but go watch the interview with Spit and Chicklets. It's actually a great interview. It gives really good insight about players in New York City, John Tortorella. It's awesome. What he said about Ottawa, and he said a few other things just about like the food and stuff, but that was under Melnick. So I feel like that's kind of a moot point now. But the thing that stood out to me, which I tweeted, was when he was sent down, the Sens, and he didn't mention names, but this is Dorion and I'm assuming DJ, but I think this is more on Dorion than DJ. Del Zotto said that they brought him in and said, or they sent him down at the end of the year, at his end of year meeting before he was bought out. They told him, we sent you down as a scapegoat because you're a well-liked teammate and the team needed a wake-up call. So this is I think this is really timely, okay? Because for a couple seasons, and this was the same year that Matt Murray was sent down around the same time down to Belleville. That was in 2021, I believe, December 2021. So this was when things were like, it was all over the place for the Sens, right? So this is the thing I'm talking about, reactionary moves. Like it's so easy as a fan to be like, oh, cut Travis Hamnick, or do this, like call up this guy and send this guy down, trade this guy, put him on waivers, buy him out. It's not EA Sports here, and I think what this Del Zotto thing did, and with this new management not doing a thing yet, it just really hammers home the aspect of hockey managing and coaching that we all take for granted. And even if you think you don't, you do until you're in it. Like we, even just talking about it, we still take for granted how important it is. The managing of people is 50% of the job. And that was the first thing Staios mentioned when they alluded to their success in Hamilton. It's because they managed people and brought in good people. So I think there's a tie-in with the patience of this new regime. What Andlauer said, we're evaluating everything, and the snap call to send a guy on waivers that you signed like 3 months ago to a 2-year deal who wasn't the problem. It was just a issue, an issue. It just really points to how dysfunctional the Sens were in the past. And this isn't like a decade ago. This was 2 seasons ago. Like all the new guys were still here. All the young guys that are on the team right now are still there. I found it wild. I really did. Del Zotto was, listen, like he's a great guy. He's fun, but like the food stuff I was talking about, he was kind of just complaining about the quality of what they were served after games and compared to like the Rangers and stuff like that. I rolled my eyes at that. I didn't clip that because it was just, I mean, you're in the NHL, like you'll survive kind of thing. And he'd been to a lot of other cities. So this was just crazy to me because it's just a blatant example and another example of the mismanagement of people that the Sens went through under Pierre Dorion and Eugene Melnyk. And it was pretty eye opening.
Yeah, there's been a lot of players who have kind of come out and said stuff about like Ottawa too back in the day and under Melnyk and the crazy stories of Melnyk, like the things he did back in those playoff runs too. And there's all sorts. I mean, but like you said, this is recent, so it's a little bit different. I don't even have that much on Del Zotto. I just want to add this crazy funny arc for him that that happened a little while ago. So I posted a picture on Instagram not too long ago, and it was, when was this? This was back in April actually, so it was a while ago. But it was DJ Smith. It was a poll of if he should be fired or not. 85% of fans said yes, he should be fired. This was in April, and Michael Del Zotto liked that picture. So it's just like this petty little thing for, he's clearly got this grudge against him. But I think a lot of players kind of have the same sort of thoughts. They didn't enjoy their time in Ottawa back with old ownership. Do you have something to add to that?
I will say, yeah, because I posted it and people are saying, oh, it's on DJ, it's DJ. Like from everything we've heard, DJ is a great players coach. So I'm not gonna I think Del Zotto just didn't like him because of the situation. Like, I think Tyler Ennis butted heads with DJ a bit because he was scratched. Like, I'm sure Dylan Gambrell doesn't love him, and McEwen's probably not a fan. Like, if you get scratched, no matter who the coach is, you're going to be pissed. You're going to be sour. You're a pro athlete. You like to go out and compete. So that's what I read into that DJ stuff. But like, I think it's just the man. Like coaches don't send players down. But like it was a dysfunctional mess, man. It really was. So really interesting to hear. And again, it was a great interview. Like it's just, Chicklets is just dynamite for their interviews with players, the insight they get. And Dos Santos, he's a funny guy. Like some of the stories he had was pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. And other than that, I mean, I know you said you had to wrap up a little bit early today. So other than that, like we've got 15 minutes until, well, the anthems, I guess. I hate saying puck drop because they always delay it by 10 minutes and it's 5:10 for me, 7:10 for you. So other than that, yeah, I think we've hit on a lot of topics here. I think we've got some good engagement in the chat. And yeah, like the kind of summary of our pod today is that long term things are very optimistic for Ottawa. The ownership is stable. They acknowledge the fact that things have not been great this year on the ice. We're confident tonight, like chance to prove it, right? It's a prove it game. The next 4 games are going to be before their 5-game road trip. The next 4 games are going to be super hard, but also like I think it's a good thing because if you can come out and beat those good teams, you've got a chance to kind of prove to the league that you're serious and prove to Sens fans that you're not a joke, as was seen in the first 2 months. So start it tonight. Igor Shesterkin and net 18-4-1 New York Rangers. What better game to prove yourselves as a 9-10 team, get back to 500, and then Toronto on Thursday will be a huge game too. So yeah, other than that, that's pretty much what we got today.
Quick note before we send everyone away here. The last time these two teams played, just over a year ago, Jacob Trouba, Brady Tkachuk squared off at center ice. Brady Tkachuk probably his best game of his
They've had
career.
some great games against each other.
I was gonna say they don't play boring games. They had a game 2 seasons ago with Del Zotto, like that year, where the Sens played really well, and then there were a couple bad calls. The Rangers storm back and win, get 3 goals in the third period and like ruin that one. So like these teams don't play boring games, is my point. And like it's been a pretty good rivalry actually since 2012, I think 2017 playoff series too. Like the Rangers are an original 6 team. They've got 3 straight games here against original 6 franchises. Like that doesn't mean nothing in hockey to me. So expect a good one tonight. I expect the Sens to bring their A game. Let's do a score prediction quickly before we go here. I am going to say, I think the Rangers win this one, but I think it'll be close. I think it'll be a good game. It'll be more painful when the Sens eventually end up losing, in my opinion. I think it'll be, I'm going to go 3-2 New York in regulation.
3-2. Okay. I'm going to go, I'm going to say 4-3 Ottawa in overtime. Oh,
Okay,
Yeah,
so the difference that we've got there, the Sens are going to score a 6-on-5 goal for you, and I don't think they
that's
will.
right.
That's my my skepticism. So we thank everyone for watching us here. Another edition, Everyday Sens podcast, a live stream edition. Remember to like the YouTube video, please. Comment along again, like even if you're watching after, just throw your thoughts in. We really appreciate it. Subscribing to the YouTube page goes a long way as well. We're on the road to 2,000. I don't know, man. Like, hopefully, when these games start going again, we can do more of these, because we complain about the schedule, but it was also tough for us. Just getting into a groove with the games and everything like that. So we're hoping to get back on track a little bit with these pre-games because they're fun to do. So that's been it for the Everyday Sense podcast. A reminder to subscribe again, and thank you